Thank you for joining my show, Empowering Creatives to Live Their Dreams. I'm Jessica Osrak. Today, we have a mission-driven guest with a focus on AI, SEO, and sustainability for profitability, Will Melton. Welcome, Will.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yes, I am excited to have you here. So, Will is the CEO of Xponent21. He is the founder of Richmond Water and the radio talk show host for America's Healthiest City. So, Will, I understand you started studying at VCU as a freshman. And then, in your words, you traded in your plans to excel in college for a full-time endeavor into developing a technology services company. So
Yes.
tell me, what moment inspired you to step off of the path of earning a bachelor's degree and leap into computer concepts?
Well, I would say that it was uh, stepping off the path. I think that's such an interesting thing to say because it was a path. I think college is a path that is painted for so many young people as sort of the way that you're going to create wealth for yourself in the future, a way that you're going to empower yourself with skills and knowledge and experiences that will make you marketable for the world. And I had already, even at that point in my life, had worked for a lot of different people as a young person and, could always see the flaws in the businesses and wanted to share my thoughts on how things could be better. And that wasn't always well received from a teenager. But you learn the pattern of, wait, I'm supposed to be somebody who's kind of fixing things, going against the grain, not really falling into the systems that exist, but seeing where the opportunities are in our systems to improve. And I didn't know it then, but I did not do the things that I was supposed to do to be a good student. And when I was there, I didn't feel like it was the space I should be in. I felt like I was um, making a big mistake by spending money and time on something that I wasn't passionate about, something that I didn't really have a lot of clarity about how it was going to help me in my future.
Mhm.
And I did have this other pathway, I think, available to me, which was going and owning a business that could help folks. And just so happened that, everybody in 2003 had a personal computer at home. And in that era, there were just a ton of viruses and problems associated with owning a computer that my brain was uniquely able to kind of just step in without a lot of formal education to be able to do. So I joined a group of folks that had already started a business. I was able to be part owner of that and learn, really from experience how to operate a business. I was kind of in that role and in the marketing role. But looking back, I used a lot of the skills that I learned in high school in my electives, and they were all in marketing of some sort, marketing and communications, to be able to do the things that I needed to do to step forward. I chose the hard way. I will freely admit that. But I think the lessons that I've learned along the way have prepared me for the season that I'm in today. And it's been rewarding. So I wouldn't do it differently if I had the option.
So you said you took marketing in high school?
Yes, I had electives that covered newspaper, yearbook, e-commerce, some advanced writing classes, and then I feel like I'm forgetting one, but maybe photography. That was the other one. So
Okay.
I was not really thinking I'm going to go be a marketer. I actually went to VCU to study business administration, not
Mm-hmm.
marketing. Um, I just I think my creative brain thought those things were interesting and I wanted to go learn about them and I had fun doing them and they all just kind of stuck around in my life.
Are you from the Richmond area?
So, not originally. I've been here since 2017. I was in Williamsburg since 2000. Prior to that, I spent a couple years in Connecticut, but Michigan, North Carolina, New Jersey. I've been all over the place.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Yeah, just in
Virginia's
here,
home.
what's Richmond's home?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that you list so many electives for your high school experience. So that was impressive. So I was wondering what education you had had. So I know the local schools offer a lot of different unique curriculums for students. So that was where my question was coming from. So where did you go to high school?
Lafayette High School in Williamsburg.
Okay, fantastic. Nice. All right.
Yeah.
So, from what I understand, you helped grow that startup that you made the shift to exponentially over 8 years. You mentioned that everybody had a home computer in 2003, but what experiences really led you to your passion for helping businesses thrive through culture, customer experience, and innovative digital solutions?
Well, I think one thing was having the experience as a business owner and needing to learn how to grow a company. I had a lot of DIY ability. I could create my own ads. I could, think about strategy. I could go to market for my business. But, we didn't do a lot of things super efficiently in the beginning. We were not growing as fast as I would have liked. And it wasn't really until we stepped into the digital space
Mm.
that I saw a tremendous growth for our business and, just tremendous opportunity for the future. So I actually started teaching classes in the digital marketing space because we had a classroom in our facility where we would typically teach folks how to, make sure their computer was protected and how to use Excel and Word. And so digital marketing was kind of a strange thing to have there, but we had the classroom, I had the ability, and the community didn't really know much about it. I just started, teaching it. And the funny thing was the very first class I ever taught on Google Ads was intended by some folks at our local marketing agency, kind of the folks that won all the awards. You knew them
Mhm.
by name. And I was like, well, if they don't know this stuff, there might be a real opportunity here for me. So I had talked to a couple people and I said, I'm thinking about going and starting a marketing consultancy. And they said, well, if you did, I'd hire you. So that kind of was, I went on vacation and when I came back, I had my IRS letter with my tax ID and, kind of marched forward from there. But, it was that experience of knowing that there was this big opportunity to harness digital. But then there was also the experience of having 7,000 customers that I needed to support, with, new computers and fixing computers and training and on-site and in-store and virtual. And there's a lot of stress associated with solving other people's computer problems because they need their computer to do their job, to do their life. They think they've
Mhm.
lost all the pictures of their grandkids or whatever, and they're just at a hyper tense state. And so when you do that for a number of years, it has its toll. And so I fortunately get to have, much fewer clients now in this creative role. And I do really get to help my clients manifest the life that they really want to live for themselves, if they can imagine what that is. And so
Mm.
that's been very rewarding. And it's good to be able to work alongside my peers, other business owners, other business leaders who are trying to figure this thing out. And by this thing, I mean the world that we live in that seems to be changing so fast.
Hmm. And I remember 2004. That was really a time where digital and creative and marketing were merging.
Yes.
So yeah, I really remember that time. So that was an interesting time, and it sounds like you saw that opportunity and really took advantage of it, which that's what we need to do, right? Is tune into those opportunities. So I'm interested. You mentioned about manifesting and if your clients can vision what they would love. So how do you incorporate manifestation and visualization into your work?
Well, I think that there's a couple of sides to that. There's mine, my own vision, and then there's, the vision that we, need to extract from our clients. My own vision, I think, is driven by, I would say ADD in part. I think about a lot of things, and
Uh-huh.
I'm a pattern seeker, so I pay attention to a lot of things, and I observe, um, what's happening and try to think about what might happen, and that falls into the world of economics as well as creative space as well as arts and culture. So my interests are varied, but I think that I allow myself to dabble in things because that's how I've learned. Part of the reason I left college was because I don't fit into the box of, wake up, go to class, do homework, go to sleep. I'm not disciplined in that way. I've never been, even as a high school student, but I've always been socially adept. So I can, talk to people and I can make things work through relationships. And so I think at the end of the day, I would say the answer is challenging to describe as I'm having a difficult time coming up with words right now.
That's okay.
But it is a curiosity that drives me. And when I start down a path. I may not know all the things I need to know to go there, and I may not know whether or not I really want to be there. But if I don't give it a try, if I don't experience it a little bit, I won't get to find out if this curiosity is a passion, or if it is just something, an itch that needs to be scratched, and then I can move on. And so I allow myself to scratch a lot of those itches.
Mhm.
And sometimes I discover that if I stick with it for just a little bit longer, if I have enough passion to hang on, then things happen and the world gives me feedback that is positive, and there's that endorphin that comes that is positive and feels good. And I think maybe I chase that a little bit. And so having discovered the potential with trying things, I'm not afraid to try new things, and that makes it easy. For my clients, on the other hand, I think it's a much harder question, and I'm not a coach. I would never claim to be one, but marketing is storytelling, and
Mhm.
manifestation is about telling the story that you want other people to believe, and sometimes it's about telling the story that you yourself want to believe about yourself, and storytelling, whether it's through video or writing or visuals or whatever, it bakes that and it makes it real for us as well as for others. And that's something we can go to market with.
So, for many creatives, it's a dream to see their work reach a larger audience. How do you help mission driven companies achieve this visibility? And what role does AI SEO play in empowering creatives and brands to tell those stories that you just touched on?
The thing is we have to meet people where they are.
Hmm.
Everybody is out there in the world, like I said, trying to figure this out, and they don't have all the answers, and they don't always have time to ask their neighbor for the answers, or their friends, or their loved ones. We need to rely on the digital world to give us answers and to give us input. And so we all use Google, we all use these different tools to find information. And these days, we rely very heavily on some automated systems that give us information that we don't necessarily have to sift through all the details. That has some good things. It has some, challenges. We don't need to be eating rocks or putting glue on our pizza. And that's some of the information that we're getting from these autonomous systems. But we do rely on that information to be able to get information quickly. And so, my thinking was, how do we make sure that when people, as we move into this future that is more AI driven, as sort of the way that people used to use search engines no longer applies, how do we maintain relevance? How do we stay visible? And really, the sad thing is, I want to say, is that we're being kind of whittled down to a single idea with the responses that we're getting. We're not clicking on, we're not, again, sifting through all these different options. We're kind of relying on that one bit of information that comes. And so for a brand or for somebody with an idea, if you're not showing up in that spot, if you're
Hmm.
not controlling the information that's coming out of Alexa, or the response that ChatGPT is giving you, or the AI overviews are giving you, you are missing at least 25% of just Google searches, because more than 25% of Google searches include this AI component. And so I think that the storytelling component of a brand is married to this in a way, because we have to talk about ourselves in a favorable light. We have to kind of position ourselves in a way that our would-be clients can see themselves benefiting from what we have to offer, because it's about them, it's not about us. So we have to effectively tell that story, but we also have to, again, meet people where they are. So when they ask that question and they go to Google and they say, how much does it cost to build a website? That's going to be an important question for somebody who's in the decision phase of building a new website.
Hmm.
Well, I could probably tell you that I'm not going to show up for that particular answer, but it would behoove me in my business, because we build websites, to do that, to make sure that we are the ones who are answering the question for the people who are asking, so that when they come to our website, they feel safe and comfortable, and they understand that we work to help them through their problem first, not come to them with an ask of saying, hey, let's have this, discovery call, and let's, get down to the brass tacks of how much this is going to cost you, because people just don't feel that comfortable quite yet. So,
Hmm.
it's a long road, but at the end of the day, we can control those results. We can control what shows up at the top of, AI and search, and it's not too difficult, which is kind of fun.
Right. Yes, it is fun. And you touched on the question, right? And I'm sure that you see that the quality of question that you put into that search is going to produce the quality of the results as well.
Yes. And what we're seeing is that people are becoming more specific with their questions. It used to be in the world of SEO, we'll just use websites as the example because I already used it before. People don't go to Google and search website design when they're looking to hire somebody to build a website, or when they're trying to figure out how much it costs to build a website, or when they're trying to figure out the different kinds of websites that exist. That's not how people search. So owning that keyword doesn't make any difference. Yeah, you want to show up when people search for the things around it, but it's really that entire body of information of learning and solving for a person's journey that has to be met by a single entity in order to effectively play in that space and in order to effectively be who shows up to the top. These systems are looking for helpful content. They're looking for authoritative content. They're looking for they want to see that somebody who knows what they're doing has authored this and has put it out there for the world to see, and that it's somewhat verifiable, but it's got to also be unique. It cannot be the same thing that the guy over here said and that the gal over there said yesterday or 5 years ago or 15 years ago. It's got to be what's happening in 2025 because this is 2024.
Mhm.
You are preparing for the future. You're not playing to yesterday's game.
Right. Yes. And I'm sure there's that balance too between being progressive, being on the front, but also not being too far ahead that people can't relate as well. Right. So, did you have something to say about that?
I think that's where your ability to kind of see patterns and to observe
Mm,
data plays a role. Because,
interesting.
I can tell you there's not a lot of people searching right now for AI SEO or, how to rank in AI search results. But that's going to be something that people will search for more and more and more when the AI overview occupies 50% of search results or more. People are going to want to clamor for that space. So I'm ahead of the curve a little bit because I see a pattern emerging in that particular space.
Right.
So we can make these sort of decisions, these competitive decisions, as we do the work. But yeah, we don't want to be spending our time on things that nobody's searching for because that's not going to benefit us whatsoever.
Hmm. Right. And I'm sure you go into educating your clients so that they can conceive the value of investing in AI SEO and meeting them where they're at. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a constant education job.
Yeah.
This is, I just completed a 42 lesson course on this subject because it
Mm,
is that complicated. The challenge to educate people is great, but I think that my work has always been about exciting my clients. It's
mm,
not always about educating them because they don't need to know everything. They need to know it enough to
mm.
know why they're putting their money there. But they need to
Right.
be excited about the outcome that we're going to deliver as a result of doing this work. That's my job at the end of the day.
Right. Like if someone asks for the time, you tell them the time, you don't tell them how the watch is built. Right.
Yeah. I love that analogy.
Yeah, I think that relates perfectly. Sustainability is a big part of your work. What inspired you to make this a personal mission of yours?
That's a great question, and I don't have an answer for it. I know that I feel deeply that we have a responsibility to our planet, and whether we're actively killing it with our behaviors or if we're just making it a little worse, it's debatable. But I know that, for one thing, when I walk around, my great city of Richmond, I will see plastic water bottles and soda bottles and food trash, floating along the streets. And some places are cleaner than others, and sometimes some places are great because they've been cleaned up, and then sometimes they're just terrible. And it's an experiential thing. That's wanting to live in a clean world, I think, more than anything, not having that sort of residual filth kind of clinging to my environment. When you take away my personal interest in this and you just look at what consumers are doing, there's a compelling case for businesses. And this is where my passion emerges. 3 years ago, there was a study that was done. I'm going to forget the name of the organization. I'll come to it in a minute. They found that 63% of consumers, or 60% of consumers, would spend more for goods that are sustainable. And this is a company that advises convenience stores and gas stations. So they do the study every year, and last year they did the study, and that number had jumped to 67%. And in
Wow.
January of this year, when they did the study again, 80% of consumers said that they would spend more for goods that were sustainable. And I think the number was like 10 to 20% more that they would spend on average. And that is a compelling case for a business who looks to attract new customers, create a stickiness with their customers, create that loyalty, and earn more for the goods and services that they sell. I think that if you can do a good job telling your sustainability story, how are you working to make the planet better?
Hmm.
Not just that, you're maybe not running the lights at night or something like that, but like what are the proactive steps that you as a business are doing to make this place better? That's going to attract people to you and your brand. And it's going to be something that people feel is an authentic commitment to their values. And 80% of consumers are telling us this. It's going to be much easier to form a bond with those people and to be friends with that brand for those consumers. And they've told us that they're willing to spend more for these goods and services. So we know that we can charge more for it. So it gives us an opportunity. Not always are the sustainable decisions the most profitable ones in the beginning of a business's evolution. But what I found and what I do believe very strongly is that if we make those decisions early on and we pair it with that storytelling, we will be rewarded over the long term with, reduced costs because we made a sustainable decision, but also increased profits because we don't have to work as hard. We don't have to spend as much money on marketing, winning customers. It's sustainable in an economic sense, not just in a sense of what it does for our environment.
Hmm. And when you're talking about sustainability for a business, are you talking about how the company runs their business, or are you talking about like if they're selling products, the materials they're using to create the product? I know laundry detergent is a big one, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of talk about it causing cancer and the bottles, how they're not being recycled because they're contaminated inside.
Yep.
So are you looking at both of those, or are you finding that one way is more appealing to consumers than another when they're looking to purchase?
No, I would say both are very important. Now, I'm not saying that companies need to go out of their way to create new products that are sustainable just because they don't have any sustainable products or they don't make products. I think that they should be looking at their operations and what they're doing to deliver their product or service to the marketplace and figure out how they can be more ecologically friendly in that process. And then, a lot of the things that businesses are doing have visibility to customers. So if you're making a product, what's the package that it comes in that the customer is going to put in their hands? They're going to see that. I can't imagine that it's good when I see a Pepsi bottle, crushed on the side of the street. I can't imagine that's a good thing for Pepsi's brand, right? So consumers are paying attention, they're seeing this stuff, and not all of it's visible. So we kind of have to work to tell that story. In my business, we're a fully remote business. We get together, we're all in Richmond, but we get together
Hmm.
sometimes. But we all work from home and we've made that decision. But that's not the big story for us. The big story for us is the number one emission source in our business is that we build websites. And I can build a website that is heavy on compute power and gives no regard for, what resources it consumes. Or I can say, let's build a website that loads quickly. It doesn't take a lot of compute resources and it saves energy in the process of delivering a similar experience to a website that didn't give consideration to that. So we can save CO2 emissions through that. We can also choose to host websites on either zero emissions hosts or carbon neutral hosts who buy carbon credits or offset in some other way. So we can make conscious decisions and we have to tell those stories because my customers and the people out there would never know that our sites are more sustainable if I didn't say that. So sometimes it's making some new things and creating products that allow the world to move beyond a thing that's not good for us. But a lot of times it's just, how do we operate in the world? What are we doing? And I actually believe that's what marketing is about anyway. It's not about what we do for work. It's about what we're doing differently today that people want to pay attention to or should pay attention to.
And I think that's where marketing and sales really comes in as service, because I didn't even know that there were those two domains that you just mentioned. And so it's there's all these wonderful companies and services out there. And if they don't market and sell to consumers, then consumers aren't going to be able to benefit from these amazing products and services. So, you have a 10-year initiative to make Richmond the healthiest city by 2033. And that's ambitious. I guess you just started this last year. So, what inspired this goal, and how are you using digital strategies to ensure success?
So, 2020, I participated, starting in 2019, I participated in the Leadership Metro Richmond Quest flagship program, which is a 10-month intensive cohort of people who are studying the community, studying its problems, and studying how to be better leaders in delivering solutions around those things. So it's a cross section of nonprofit leaders and for-profit leaders, government leaders, all coming together to learn how to make the region better. So the big takeaway from that for me was that Richmond, like I'm sure every other place, has problems, has a lot of problems, quite frankly, that we have to work on if we want to make our community better. But it was overwhelming to me in that moment, and pair that with the pandemic, there wasn't a whole lot that I was able to do at that time. I had a team of people that we needed to, support and make sure that they had jobs, and so we went head down and shifted our business the way we needed to. But the thought that these problems existed never really left me. And for the next couple of years, I thought about what could I do? What impact could I have to make a difference? And quite frankly, I was like, I'm not professionally in a position to do anything about this. I'm not a healthcare provider. I'm not a data science person. Like, we're not doing this work. But I knew that one of Richmond's biggest challenges was bringing people together around a belief system that things are possible. One of the biggest things that I learned is that there's this natural friction, that emerges from, just a lot of trauma and problems that this region has seen over years, and just having a regional system where multiple entities have to come together to make the metro work. It's hard. I thought, first place we have to start is build a belief system that we could do it, that it's possible that Richmond, the tobacco capital of America, and the place that has two highways running through it, and severe poverty and just all these challenges, could potentially be the healthiest city in America. That was the first challenge to beat, and that becomes it's sort of a PR challenge. It's a public awareness thing. It's building that mantra of regular communications that this is possible. And so when I thought about it through that lens, I said, well, we're communications people. We can build a website. We can kind of create that grassroots movement. And the idea was that we would start an ideas board online that people can submit small ideas, big ideas, things that people could latch onto and leave a comment, and sort of a community board where people could share ideas and exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started down that path, and that was going to be what it was. And then very early in 2023, I was invited to host 30 minutes on ESPN here locally on the radio. And I didn't actually think twice about it. I didn't ask any questions. I just said yes. And I knew exactly what I was going to do, because part of building a belief system is showing people the examples of what is happening and who is doing something to make things better. I think if you have a belief that things aren't getting better, if you have a belief that we are, not able to accomplish things, it's probably because you're not out there doing something yourself to make things better. Because if you were, you would meet those people who are busting their butts to make it better. And so I think that those stories are really important, and it's been a lot of fun telling them. I do think that I cannot do it alone, and so my hope is that I bring other people along with me as we do this work, and we've got a lot to do. We've got still more than 8 years left in this challenge, and we've got data that we need to capture, and we've got a platform we need to build, and I don't know how we're going to do it, but I believe in this community, and I think the belief system at least is forming, and we can go there.
That's wonderful. And I love that you said that you don't know how you're going to do it, but yet you committed to it already. I'm a certified life mastery consultant. And one of the things that I encourage in my workshops and in my programs is that suspend the how. First, define what you would love, what you would love to see. So when you're talking about the healthiest city, what are some of the aspects of where you want Richmond to be healthier?
Yeah, so I'm not going to get all these right, but there's 8 different categories of data points and
Okay.
metrics, and some of them have to do with individual health. Some of them have to do with environmental qualities, um, and some of them have to do with economic statuses. And I think, one of the things that's happening in Richmond is that a number of powerful entities from Chamber RVA, Plan RVA, the Community Foundation, the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation, they're all coming together to focus on an initiative, empower people economically. And they're going to pick 2 census tracts, and they're going to focus resources on those 2 for a period of time in order to have tangible outcomes for people who are, really, really suffering from poverty and all the challenges that go along with that. Eventually, what will happen is they'll take what their lessons from that and allow that to expand and proliferate elsewhere. And obviously, refining things and making things better, getting rid of the things that don't work.
Mhm.
Um, that intentional focus on that one thing, economic mobility, I think is going to have a tremendous impact on the health outcomes of people who live here, because everything is really tied to this sense of stability. Do we have a home that we can call our own, that we can have pots and pans to cook a meal in, that we have a
Mhm.
refrigerator that we can keep perishable foods in, the healthier foods. That we have access to transportation that can take us to the doctor when we need to go to the doctor, or that we can get to a grocery store without, several different, jumps across different buses that, by the way, I don't have time for because I've got 3 jobs.
What really comes to mind is Maslow's hierarchy, which I
Mhm.
know there's a lot of different opinions, but that one has always stuck with me that, having those basic needs and then you eventually get to self-actualization, which I think a lot of people in this time in 2024 have gotten to. So I love that idea. And one of the things that I teach is really about, poverty is the lack of awareness, and there's really only abundance in this world. So outside of work, you're actively involved in Richmond's community, helping to elevate it as one of the healthiest cities. So how does your community work contribute to your own personal and professional dreams?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And in an interview I had earlier this week, I was talking about the nexus of my life, the things in my life, and
Mhm.
I'm a rat. As much as I might kind of chase things that seem interesting and my curiosities and all of that, I make very calculated decisions. And so I'm trying to figure out how one thing I do is going to help some other area that I'm involved with. And so, every nonprofit organization that I sit on the board for, I can see a very clear pathway to where my involvement there is going to lead to natural connections with other people that might help my business, or where, my business has the ability to amplify what it is that nonprofit is doing, or that I can create connections between 2 different nonprofits that, perhaps could collaborate on something to make things better for the community. So, I believe that if I can introduce a solution to my life or to the world, I should be looking at it not through the lens of, the problem that it solves, but can this solution solve multiple problems if we engineer it in such a way that that's possible? So, I think that more than anything, the relationships that I gain from networking and from investing my time into endeavors in the community have been great. But I've also learned a lot about long-term thinking and planning, and I've grown a lot as a professional, as a leader, through sitting in boardrooms and hearing other people's ideas and
Mm.
seeing how, nonprofit organizations have evolved to maturity. I learned so much through those rooms, and it's really humbling because as a leader, you think that you have the ideas, you think you're the person who's going to kind of swoop in and get everybody amplified, and, motivated and excited.
Mhm.
But quite frankly, there's some component to that, but it's really everybody else in the room who brings the energy, and it's illuminating their
Mm.
energy that is, I think, my biggest lesson in all of it.
I love that, illuminating other people's energy. It really is, right? It's like you bring your energy and then it helps to spark other people to get excited and motivated. And that's wonderful. So, for creatives aspiring to make an impact through leadership or innovative strategies, what advice would you offer on pursuing and living the dream?
So I would say that the biggest lesson that I could impart on anybody is to think longer term. I
Mhm.
used to try to figure out how to make it through the next year, and I had ideas for how the year could be great and fun and interesting, and it always was, But I think that when I stopped and said, "Well, why am I not as successful as I want to be?" And why are other people? What are they doing differently? They're signing 20-year leases. They're doing, advertising deals with, sports teams that are spanning, many, many years. It's recognizing that those people have the confidence to do that because they're not planning for the business to be out of business in 20 years. If you're thinking, what am I going to do to keep my business open for the next year? You're not thinking about, what is it going to take for me to be in business 5 years from now? And so that longer term vision is challenging to always spend time on and to think about. But one of the things that I ask myself on a regular basis, and I write it down, the answer to this question is, why do you do the hard things? And at the end of the day, I've learned that when you're focused on the short term, your opportunity to be rewarded is also on the short term. And the short term rewards are often not that gratifying. They're often easy to come by, but they don't necessarily provide a lot of benefit. Whereas the long-term rewards, by doing the hard things, those benefits stick around. They come and it's like it's reputation. Sometimes it's opportunity, so money. Those things stick around, and you cannot get those any other way. You can't replace them. And I think that yes, like being able to say we're not sure how we're going to get there, but we're going to get there. That's important because it pushes us to march in a direction that is likely, to be a success for us, even if we don't know. And I tell you what, I've learned something else. People respect you when you do that. People have a tremendous amount of
Mhm.
respect for the people who are willing to step out on a ledge and try something, because most people aren't, and they admire it as much as they might, give bad advice and say, "Are you sure about that?" They still want to do it themselves, and they're just
Mhm.
expressing their own insecurities.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Thank you for sharing that. So you're known as being a compassionate leader. How do you cultivate that compassion in the work environment? And you talk about bringing courageous creativity and service to every project. I'd love to hear you talk about that.
So I think it's more of what I was just talking about. In a sense, people, and especially since the pandemic, people do what I call hiding. They do not share their ideas. They don't start on creative projects because they fear that they're going to fail or that something's not going to go well. And so for me, creativity is about recognizing that as humans, our job is to create. And you might have a non-creative job and think that you're not a creative person and your job isn't to be creative. But creativity is a virtuous cycle. And when we start to create things and we learn what we can do, and we can sense that gratification that comes from making something, and oftentimes seeing other people's reaction to what we've made can also provide that gratification. And I think it creates the spark in us to want to do more of that and to see what else we can try to do. And that's what this is all about. And I think that we're trying to do things that we're not so sure about. If we were sure about it, it would be terribly boring. We wouldn't want to do it because we would know what the outcome is. We'd know
Mm,
exactly what we were going to get, and it would just be work. But creativity gives us the license to say, I'm going to try, and it may not be pretty, but I'm going to have fun with it, and I might give up at some point, and that's okay too. So long as I'm not letting somebody down along the way. You have to keep your promises as well, or at least be willing to deal with those consequences, the reputational consequences of maybe not delivering. But I think if you're basing all of that off of some expertise and experience, you should be able to feel pretty safe that feeling of discomfort is growth.
and do you encourage this approach amongst your team regularly?
As best as I can.
Mhm.
Our work is very busy. So a lot of things to do, and so it is challenging to always be breathing that in. But I think that we do a good job to give people access to different opportunities. We start a bunch of weird things and invite people in to ideate around them. We do a lot of fun things too. I mean,
Mhm.
we do a water cooler on Wednesday morning, and inevitably, we'll end up writing lyrics to a song or a script to a play or something, and it's funny, and we're having a ton of fun with it. It may not ever get produced, but we got to be creative and we got to be silly, and I think that reminding people that it's okay to play, that is part of life, even for the oldest adults,
Mhm.
and that play gives us a lot of opportunities to learn and grow. I think the more we can emphasize that, the better we can do. So I definitely bring that to meetings. I'm probably maybe more of a distraction at times when it comes to those things, but we have a good time, and we are always pushing. Everybody on my team is always pushing for better, because we know we don't know everything, and we know that the future is going to be different. So we're going to have to change. So let's figure out maybe a little bit ahead of time what that might be, and be willing to be flexible early to meet the moment.
Hmm. Interesting. Great. That's wonderful. So, when you think about the legacy you want to leave, both personally and professionally, what do you dream it will be?
Great question. I believe that our future is full of sustainable companies, businesses that recognize that their responsibility to the planet is as great as their responsibility to their customers, because we all share the same one.
Mhm.
And I think that they will also realize that social entrepreneurship and conscious capitalism are good for their business. It's a little bit painful to ditch some of these theories that we've been walking around with in corporate America for the last 50 plus years, but I see it emerging. I see people in the millennial generation and Gen X and Gen Z. I see people starting businesses, um, solving some of the biggest environmental problems that we have with a profit motive. And I think that's just exciting, exciting, exciting. Innovation, AI, all these things are tools at our disposal to solve our greatest challenges. And I hope, through AI Ready RVA and through courageous creativity, I hope that we can inspire people to believe that everything is possible, and that any notion that things are too expensive or too hard, or they're going to take too long, or that there's nothing's impossible. We just have to be willing to ask the question, how are we going to do this, and is it what we all want? And I think that
Mhm.
those are different questions to answer, and maybe not for me to be the arbiter of. But as far as my legacy goes, I'm pretty sure that we're moving in that direction, and it'll make me really happy if I have a small part in making that a possibility.
Great. Wonderful. So, for those who are unsure of how to start pursuing their own dreams, what advice would you give on taking those first steps?
Um, well, everybody has to have goals, and goals are very specific. They cannot be vague or loose. You need to know where you're going and by when. And so I think one of the most important things that I have learned over my many years of being in business for myself is to set the deadline. Deadlines can move. We don't need to beat ourselves up if we don't make it, but it gives us a reference point to check in with, to check in against, to see have I made the progress that I'm supposed to be making against this goal? Have I contributed the energy? Have I brought the people to the table? Have I made the PowerPoint deck? Whatever it is that it's going to take to get there. That goal is a remarkable motivator for people. And you may not know it yet if you haven't set that goal, but just do it. It kind of hurts a little bit in pursuit of getting to that date because you are constantly reminded, hey, I got to do something. I got to re-engage with this. I think the second thing I would tell to people is to do something every day that moves you toward the goal.
Mm.
Little bits of thinking, writing, sending an email, doing some research, adding to your PowerPoint, whatever it is, do a little bit every day because what ends up happening is our life's experiences bring us lots of gifts, and we can miss out on opportunities if our brain's not engaged in the goal that we have for ourselves. And so when we do something every day, there's a lens that we kind of put over our life. And all these interactions that we have with people are sprinkled with conversations about our interests in this thing. Or, maybe there's a question that we want to ask somebody because they said something that resonates with our thinking from today or this week or this month. And so all
Mhm.
these gifts emerge that are the helpers in our pursuit. And sometimes they're people, sometimes it's information, sometimes it's the pieces coming together in our minds because we're engaged with it. But
Mhm.
but that works probably better than anything. And I found as I've set goals for myself, I'm able to do it faster and faster and faster and faster. I set the goal sooner, and I still get it done sooner than the goal because I know why I want it. I know when I want it by and what it takes to get there.
So, what inspired you to really, you mentioned ADD. What inspired
Mhm.
you to embrace your ADD, see your genius for identifying patterns, and maybe it was the same thing or something different, but what has really allowed you to have an empowered mindset throughout this whole journey?
So I'll lift the veil on the curtain a little bit and say it's like right before this call,
Hmm.
I've been working to finalize a proposal for about a week, and
Okay.
it's incredibly painful for me to do this because it's a detailed proposal, and I want to make sure that I'm putting the time into it that's right. But I have some conflicts in my brain about what the best path forward is, and that's procrastination. For me, it is stuckness, and it doesn't feel good, and I hate it. Um, I say all that because I know that I really am not the best person to be writing proposals. And so I need to grow in that area. I need to find somebody that can help me with that so that I can stop doing that because it's not what I'm best spending my time in. And so, with that little bit of knowledge, what I've done successfully in other areas of my life is um, stepping away from the painful things, the things that I don't do well or that I think I'm going to fail at, or that I'm going to let somebody down if I say I'm going to do this, but then I can't do it because I'm ADD. And what that has done for me is it's really allowed me to free up my brain and my time to do the things that I want. The
Hmm.
other thing that ends up happening is I make commitments to other people, whether it's joining a board, whether it's making setting a goal and sharing that goal with somebody else becomes a promise to them to some degree. All these external commitments also motivate me because I have a high sense of my reputation needs to be bulletproof. I can't mess that up because that is everything for me. And so I'm constantly checking in with the promises that I've made to other people to make sure I'm meeting them. And if I'm doing work that my ADD brain doesn't do well, I'm going to let a lot of people down. But if I go to that space of vision and inspiring my team and recruiting and sales from a talking perspective, not a proposal writing perspective, I'm going to be much better at having an impact, no matter what it is that I'm investing my time in, and that is by accident more than it is by design. It's spending time on the things that I really feel passionate about, and sometimes ignoring the things that I probably should be doing. Um, and it's a good way to learn a lesson, but other people don't need to learn it that way. Maybe they can make their list of don't do's early and find ways to get rid of that stuff.
Yeah, no, I've heard that several times by different books and speakers to really focus on the top 20% of what you're good at and then delegate that remaining 80%, right? And it's like, oh, if you can always focus on that 20 and continue to grow, then that will really help. So looking ahead, what dreams do you have for the future of AI in business, and what goals are you most excited about for Richmond and beyond?
So, I think for AI in business, we're going to be able to solve a lot of problems. We're
Mhm.
going to be able to solve problems in business, and we're going to be able to solve problems in society. And I'll just use one example that I think anybody can imagine and feel good about, and that are cameras at pools, swimming pools, that can detect when a child is struggling to swim. That life-saving technology exists today. There's a UK company that invented it. That sort of thing is a game changer for society. And those sorts of solutions are going to emerge. And it's not going to be just Richmond. It's going to be all over the world. So I'm really excited about that and those solutions, less about the efficiencies that we can find, in the processes of things by automating. That's going to happen too. And we can certainly embrace that so that we can focus more of our time on creative endeavors. As far as Richmond goes, and I think in Richmond's future, um, somebody asked me if Richmond would become a blue zone, and for those who don't know, blue zone is certain pockets of the world. Japan, there's a couple of places where the people who live there are incredibly healthy. They live really long lives, and when you look at what is happening in those communities, they have lived environments that support a long life. They walk everywhere. They have intergenerational households. They grow food in their yard. They share with their neighbors. They have community, culture, so many things. And when presented with that question, and I actually thought to myself, Richmond has what it takes to be a blue zone, not just the healthiest city in America. We can have, we already have so many of those great things here. And so I'm looking forward to, kind of what that looks like. Maybe there's a little bit of a cyberpunk feel to it because that's what the future feels like for me. Neon lights and tall buildings and vibrant social scenes. But I think it's more about the journey to that place and seeing how we all work to get there.
Wonderful. So anything else you'd like to tell our audience today?
Oh goodness, get out there and do it. There are going to be way more regrets by holding back and protecting yourself than there ever will be by going out there and trying. We learn so much more by going in and getting our hands dirty than we ever do by just kind of watching from the sidelines. So I hope everybody is inspired to go try something new, even if it is only going to take them a day. It's worth it to break out of that comfort zone.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you so much for participating in my show. Well, I'd love to have you on my show again to hear more about your impact and the progression of your organizations.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate the attention and the time and the opportunity to share my story. This was really great.
And thank you for joining my show, Empowering Creatives to Live Their Dreams. I'm Jessica Osrek. You can do it. I believe in you.